Hello, Year 1. Mrs. Bracken will be back again to go through your English learning with you today. It is Tuesday, the 2nd of March 2021. I hope you're all well and enjoying your learning from home. Let's get started. Okay, what are we learning today? We are learning to explain and discuss the main ideas in a poem. So we're going to continue on with our poetry this week, thinking about poems and perhaps comparing them a bit to stories, which is what we've been learning about, traditional stories. So we're going to be thinking and trying to unpick what those main ideas are in a poem. What is the poem about? What language is being used in this poem? So how can we be successful today? Listen really carefully to explore what a poem is about. Really listen to that vocabulary, because that will be giving you a hint and a clue as to what is going on and what the poet is trying to say in his poem. Listen out for new vocabulary. There might be words that you don't know yet. Make a note of those and ask a grown-up when you can. Okay, retrieval exercise. Something that we might have learnt previously. I'm going to ask you today to try and get your thinking caps on and try and get you to bring that right to the front of your memory and your mind. So does it matter how many verses a poem has? Does a poem have to only have one verse, 2 verses? Does it have to have 4 verses to be a poem? Or does it not matter? Well, it doesn't matter, does it? That's up to the poet. The poet is the person who has written the poem, and they might wish to have 1 verse, they may wish to have 4 verses. So no, it doesn't matter. We're going to look at a different poem today, and this poem is all about Jack climbing the beanstalk. As you can see in the picture, I'm going to read the poem to you, and I want you to listen really carefully. I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me, climbing the beanstalk wherever it will go. I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me, climbing up the beanstalk so I'll see where it will go. The leaves started quivering, the branches were shivering, but still they carried on growing. His legs started aching, his arms started shaking, but Jack said, I'll keep going. I'm climbing the beanstalk. So, what did you think about that poem? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it as much as yesterday's poem? Did you hear any repeated words? Did you hear any repeated phrases? Let me read the first part of the poem to you again. I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me, climbing the beanstalk wherever it will go. I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me, climbing up the beanstalk so I'll see where it will go. Is the first verse written in the first person? So remember, writing in the first person means that the poet, the person who wrote this poem, would be pretending to be the main person, the character. So is this written in the first person? Well, yes, it is, because if you look at the language and the vocabulary, I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me. The writer is referring to themselves. So yes, it's written in the first person. Do we know who is saying the second verse? Let's listen to that. The leaves started quivering, the branches were shivering, but still they carried on growing. His legs started aching, his arms started shaking. So that time they're talking about somebody else, aren't they? Who do you think the main character is in this story? It's Jack, isn't it? From Jack and the Beanstalk. Okay, we're going to really focus on this first verse now. So what do we know after reading the first verse? Is the writer, the poet, telling a story? I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me, climbing the beanstalk wherever it will go. I'm climbing the beanstalk wherever it takes me, climbing up the beanstalk so I'll see where it will go. So do you think the poet is telling a story, or is the poet telling a part of the story? We don't start with once upon a time here. So it's not a full, complete story. It's just a section of the story, isn't it? It's a section of the story of when Jack was climbing up the beanstalk after he'd thrown the magic beans out of the window. I want you just to focus for a moment on the second verse now. The leaves started quivering, the branches were shivering, but they carried on growing. Really, in particular, have a look at the word quivering. See if you can point your finger to the word quivering. There's an arrow on the screen showing you quivering. What does that word mean? Can anybody show me what quivering might look like? What do you think quivering might look like? Ooh, what might quivering look like? Now have a look at the word underneath it. Shivering. What does shivering mean? Can anyone show me what shivering might look like? Ooh. What do you think the writer is trying to tell us by using these words? Let's read the last 4 lines. But still they carried on growing. His legs started aching. His arms started shaking. But Jack said, I'll keep going. I'm climbing the beanstalk. What do you think the writer is trying to tell us here? Maybe by using words like quivering and shivering, and things are growing and Jack's legs are aching and his arms are shaking. But Jack said, I'll keep going. Maybe the poet is trying to tell us that Jack is a really determined young man, and despite all of those things, he continued to climb up that beanstalk. Even so, your main task today, you need to explain the main ideas from this poem in pictures. So I want you to go back a few slides to where you can see the whole poem, have another look at it, read it through, and then in your own ideas, I want you to draw some pictures which you feel reflect this poem. For example, you could draw a picture of Jack climbing the beanstalk with lots of leaves on it. You'll need to label your picture with words taken from the poem that help to explain it. You can use a sound mat to support labeling your picture independently. Now, if you'd like to have a fly high challenge today, can you write sentences explaining what is happening in this poem and what the writer is trying to tell the reader? So you've got your pictures which explain what you think is the writer is trying to tell the reader. You've got maybe some words labeling, but if you want to challenge yourself, can you actually create some sentences explaining what is happening in the poem? Remember to use punctuation in your sentences, and you will need to be able to read your sentences back to yourself once you've finished to check they make sense. Okay, let's reflect. So we needed to be able to explain and discuss the main ideas in a poem. Have you been successful? Can you explain the main ideas in the poem that we've looked at today? I'm sure you can. That means you've been successful. Well done. Please share some of your work by emailing it to us, and we hope you've enjoyed your English learning for today. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.